everyone, so today in this video the concept is going to be curating my own personal exhibition. As a art historian and an art history student, I thought it'd be a really fun idea if I went step by step through the processes of how I would make my own exhibition, looking at things like location, soundtracks, lighting, the artworks themselves, how I would choose those artworks, sort of themes. So that's what we're gonna do today. As I'm curating my dream exhibition, the exhibition obviously has no budget. I can have any location, artworks, anything I like. I'm gonna start by choosing the theme. So for my theme, I wanted to explore childhood, memory, transformation and return. So I'm kind of wanting my exhibition to answer the question, how did childhood spaces continue to shape our identities long after we leave them? I want the exhibition to explore not just the ways that memories are recalled, but how they're also continually reinterpreted. Simultaneously also looking at how childhood continues to exist within adulthood. So for the location, I chose Salisbury Cathedral. As someone who grew up in Salisbury, the cathedral was a place that my school used to go to very regularly for like services and assemblies and things. And also I just grew up going down there at like Christmas and holidays. So specifically the cloisters of Salisbury Cathedral is where the location will be. This place is deeply connected to my own childhood, and I want my visitors to walk around the cloisters as if the memory is like unfolding for them throughout the exhibition. In doing so, I'm exploring how do places become containers for memory, and how do childhood spaces continue to shape our identities long after we leave them. Throughout my exhibition, the visitors will hopefully experience 5 stages, move through them within the exhibition. These stages are becoming, guardians, dreams, nightmares, and returning. Now on to the fun part, which is choosing the artworks. The first artwork I have chosen is Number 9 by Marc Rothko. Rothko released his unique voice through this painting. He created richly painted dramas of delicately floating forms. For me, this painting represents finding your authentic self in childhood, whilst also being in an environment that allows you to do so. So as the colours shift between each other, it represents how moldable you are as a child. Every experience shapes you differently, has a lasting impact. Rothko's floating forms exist in a state of becoming. The boundaries between the colours remain unresolved, which I think echoes the essence of childhood itself, because it represents a period that hasn't been identified yet. I thought that alongside this painting there'd be a few supporting objects, such as a school photograph or a childhood photo, and a cathedral service programme. On an information panel there would be written Marc Rothko, 1947, and alongside it a memory such as Thursday morning assembly or winter, the smell of candle wax, waiting for an organ to begin. I wanted to talk about lighting before we move on to the next artwork. I thought it would be suitable to have candles as some source of lighting. Not only are they nostalgic and apt in this cathedral setting, but they are also transitional because they're always changing, and that embodies the transformation side of the theme. Also nostalgic of the Darkness to Light festival that takes place in the cathedral every year. Also, I'd like for the soundtrack to be a combination of the Salisbury Cathedral School choir singing hymns, organ drones from the organ, and silence. I think the children singing obviously plays a note to the past of growing up in the cathedral and children now, whilst the silence and the organ music kind of lets the visitors really absorb the information. It's not overwhelming and they can really sit with all of the paintings and the artworks. So moving on to section 2, the theme is guardians, and the artwork I've chosen is Usagi Janus 2025, Leiko Ikemura, sorry if I said that wrong. So this is a towering hybrid bronze sculpture that is half human, half rabbit. I think I'll film another video on this artist because I really like her work. What I like about the sculpture is it acts as a guide throughout the exhibition. Janus is the Roman god of transitions. It's depicted with two faces, as we can see in this sculpture, with the one eye looking forward and one eye looking back. Childhood and nostalgia exist in a similar way. Grow older, we move further away from childhood throughout time, still continue to visit it throughout memory. Here's how we're constantly looking back while still moving forward. As cloisters act as transitional spaces, they represent movement and they act as passages. They kind of exist between states of childhood and adulthood. So in a lot of ways, this sculpture mirrors the architecture, which mirrors the theme. So I would position it neither fully inside or fully outside. I also feel like the use of the rabbit-like form introduces this sense of childhood imagination. This feels like a character from a storybook, perhaps like Alice in Wonderland. It's something familiar yet still maintains some mystery, which kind of shows a figure that navigates between reality and the dreamlike essence of the exhibition. It also encompasses a sense of protection. Skirt almost highlights this sense of being held, also known as a mothering skirt, and that is sort of how the cathedral feels in itself. It felt like a place of safety, comfort and community. So these feelings are just echoed. I really feel like the visitors will feel this through looking at this piece of artwork as part of the exhibition. And alongside this artwork, I wanted to pair another one of Ikemura's artworks, Pieta in cherry red. Now I feel like this is where the emotional sense of the exhibition kicks in, as we start to look at themes of care, motherhood, growing up, protection, vulnerability and the sacred. The exhibition really is about what remains within us from childhood. And one of the most important things about childhood is being cared for, being protected, being held, and that's exactly what the painting explores. The traditional Pieta depicts the Virgin Mary holding Jesus Christ, but Ikemura transforms this image. She transforms it from its religious context and reimagines it. So Usagi Janus sculpture acts as the guide throughout the exhibition, but I like to think Pieta in cherry red acts as the emotional heart. The Pieta is one of the most recognisable images in Christian art. Growing up for me, religious imagery was part of everyday life, whether it was through assemblies, services, hymn practices, celebrations, holidays. All of these experiences were very much woven into my childhood. Ikemura doesn't just repeat those transitions, she transforms them, just like a memory itself. Your memories aren't exactly like how they happened. Also, I really like the colours, and the intense cherry red seem to glow from within the painting. It feels comforting and unsettling at the same time. It evokes warmth, love and protection, but also vulnerability and loss. And so we're not stuck on one emotional state. Memory itself isn't fixed, and every time we return to a childhood place, we see it differently. And things evolve over time, and I really think that this painting represents this. Also, the depiction of a baby being held kind of shows this navigation between dependence and independence. So while Janus acts as a guide and watches over the visitor's journey, Pieta emphasises this care for the visitor. And then instead of a traditional wall label, I want to pair it with a memory fragment. And so that would say Easter service, the cathedral filled with flowers, looking up towards the vaults, thinking they would stretch forever. Or sitting beside friends, trying not to laugh during a hymn, the sunlight turning the stone pink. These fragments make the artwork feel connected to a lived experience instead of just simply being analysed. Now moving on to section 3, the theme is dreams, and I'm looking at my fourth artwork, which I've chosen one of my favourite artists, Marc Chagall. I've chosen his painting, The Falling Angel. So dreams really encompasses the imaginative worlds of childhood. Dreams, stories, fantasies, religious symbols, private universes. This section explores how children construct inner worlds that continue to influence adult identity. I'd want the soundtrack of like the organs and the choir singing to increase here because I think it's more intense, and the fragments of the choir music drifts throughout the cloisters. This is one of Chagall's most powerful paintings because it sits between dream and reality, childhood and adulthood, innocence and catastrophe, spirituality and suffering. Chagall worked on this painting for over 20 years and the world changed a lot during this time. It reflects war, anti-Semitism, displacement, loss, exile. Yet despite all these themes, the painting still feels very dreamlike, almost childlike, just like a memory. And the way the painting relates to the theme is it kind of shows what happens when childlike innocence is met with reality. And also, unlike the previous works, it evokes a sense of instability. Something is changing, but it's falling, and the dreams begin to fracture. And in Chagall's work, he is obsessed with memory. Many of his paintings aren't depictions of reality at all. They are reconstructions. They are fragments of the past. And throughout his career, he often returned to memories of childhood, religion, family, and home. I won't go too much into him because I think I probably will do a video on him as well. And I feel like the painting really depicts what it feels like growing up. When you're a child, you feel like everything will last forever and you think places are permanent, and so are people. But adulthood soon teaches us that everything changes. People leave, people come and go, school ends, and childhood becomes a memory. And looking at this painting, I'm reminded that this transformation is not always gentle and it can feel like a fall. And of course, the angel ties in with this religious imagery that is being echoed throughout the exhibition and also the location. Yet the angel appears vulnerable, which isn't commonly seen in these kind of depictions. It is suspended between heaven and earth, which shows a kind of uncertain tone between childhood and adulthood. And this mirrors the exhibition and also how I currently feel. And I've positioned this after Ikemura's work because she explores protection and renewal, whereas Chagall introduces this tone of fragility, and it shows how change can involve loss. So this kind of shows an emotional progression throughout the exhibition. And I'd like to pair this artwork with a memory fragment such as the last day at school, walking through the cloisters, knowing I would return, knowing it would never quite feel the same. Or I could also put watching older students leave, thinking adulthood seemed impossibly far away, then suddenly arriving there myself. Therefore, my curatorial argument shows that Rothko represents becoming, Ikemura represents transition, while Chagall represents that moment that we realise childhood can't be preserved exactly the way it was. Okay, the next painting I want to include in my exhibition is over Vitebsk. It was painted during 1915 and it depicts a figure alone floating over the town of Belarus where Chagall grew up, which is another painting by Chagall. And I think what fits in with this painting is that the town is physically present, but the figure feels very separated from it. That tension makes this painting really powerful. The figure isn't standing within his childhood home, he's floating above, but he can't seem to quite fit himself in the town or revisit the place physically, just like how we can't always return to the version of ourselves that inhabited these places. This is where it becomes personal to me, as it represents what it's like returning to the cathedral as an adult. The building hasn't changed at all, the cloisters are still there, everything is the same, but I have changed. And because I've changed, the place feels different too. And this painting represents how we never really return to childhood. And actually, on deeper reflection, I think I would position this painting before the falling angel, because then in order we have Janus showing transition, Pieta showing protection, over Vitebsk, I can't pronounce that, shows distance and memory. The falling angel shows loss and transformation. And the memory fragment I would pair it with would be last day of term, walking through the cloisters, thinking I would remember everything, not realising memories change shape. So very similar to the last one, but changed slightly. Or simpler, returning years later, same stone, same arches, different person. Okay, and then my closing and final painting is by Florine Stettheimer, and I think all of the artists I've mentioned in this video are some of my favourite artists. I'll probably do videos on them later on, which is why I'm not really going heavily into the details of them and more just focusing on the singular artworks. And the painting I've chosen by her is Cathedral of Art. I think this represents returning back to childhood. Of course, the painting also ties in because it depicts cathedrals and it's visually very similar to the other artworks. And unintentionally, a lot of these paintings have been from the 1940s. I think that might just be a personal taste issue, that I can have a bit of a bias towards choosing paintings from this era. And I feel like Stettheimer isn't really heavily focused on the religious depictions of this cathedral in this artwork. She's more just focused on the world of art. She's depicting artists and collectors and patrons, museums, creativity, culture. And in this sense, she's really elevating the art world into something sacred. And throughout this exhibition, Salisbury Cathedral has definitely functioned as not only a real place, but also a childhood memory and a symbol. And by the end of the exhibition, the visitor has travelled through childhood, protection, dreams, loss, memory. And now this final work suggests how the places that shape us don't just disappear, they become part of how we see the world. And the reason why I've chosen this for my own personal exhibition is because Salisbury Cathedral and the school that is next to it helped create the person today who would later study art history and visual culture. And so the exhibition comes very full circle for me. It less so focuses on childhood directly. The artwork kind of focuses on what happens afterwards, how experiences shape us. I think what I'm trying to say with this artwork is that childhood continues to exist throughout adulthood, and I'm trying to show how memory isn't valuable because it helps us return to the past. Memory is valuable because it continues to shape the future, and the people that we become are built from the places that we've been. And I love how the exhibition begins within the cathedral and then it ends with a painting that transforms art into a cathedral. I think it creates that curatorial symmetry. The exhibition kind of begins with a religious space and then it ends treating culture as something sacred. Stettheimer's cathedral is not built from stone, it's built from creativity, imagination, and artistic community. And in a way, it suggests how art can be a spiritual experience. And for me personally, the painting shows how growing up, my influences were always to do with art, and it foreshadows my future studying art history currently, and how unknowingly I was led towards art and creativity anyways. And then I'd pair this with a memory fragment. The choir has finished, the candles have burned down, the cloisters are empty, yet something still remains. Or even better, I think, we do not return to childhood, childhood returns to us. And I think the order of artworks in the exhibition is kind of perfect because it starts with Rothko focusing on becoming, and it ends with Stettheimer, and it's where that it echoes that sense of becoming fulfilled. The visitor kind of starts with this identity that is still forming and ends with an understanding that all these childhood experiences, like hymns, assemblies, cloisters, choristers, candles and rituals, didn't disappear. They became part of the person standing in the exhibition today. And that's why that artwork fits so well as the conclusion. It transforms the exhibition from being about nostalgia into being about formation and transformation, identity, and also the enduring influence of childhood on adult life. The exhibition could also be paired with non-art objects, such as a hymn book or a service program, school photographs, candle holders, choir music. And then the exhibition is combining art, memory and archive, rather than just being a collection of paintings, along with the soundtrack and the lighting. So yeah, that was my exhibition. I hope you guys enjoyed watching it and going through the processes, and also my explanations for why I chose artworks and soundtracks and lighting and things. It was definitely an exhibition that was very personal to me. Let me know if you'd like to see me do another video like this. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!